It is 8:32 p.m. in the brother house. Okay. I just needed to say a time before I start recording. Okay, just because this doesn't measure time and I'm confused as fuck. Hello everyone, thank you for listening. I hope you're living your life to the fullest, and if you're not, just write yourself a pros and cons list of what you're happy with and unhappy with. And decide the reasons to change what makes you happy. Does that even make sense? I don't know. Life is way too short and there's no kind way to say it. So make it your life because you are the main character. Being selfish sounds like a bad thing. Positive selfishness is fulfilling your needs without intending bad on others. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I want to hear you doing this from today. Okay. So in today's podcast, I'm going to give you a rundown of how to be 100% independent. Many of you love the idea of this. Maybe you've been in a long-term relationship for years, or maybe you're more than ready to move out of your parents' home. Whatever the circumstances, I got you, okay? I've been there, I've done that. I wouldn't say it was a choice, however, I've done it. I've learned the hard way for sure, you know? So I do think people need this advice because I swear I just wish someone gave me the advice I'm going to give you. I would call myself a damn professional in this area. I had no choice. But it made me so independent from a very early age. I've always had to make my own choices. I know that sounds really silly because everyone makes their own choices, but at the age I was, I probably shouldn't have been making the choices I was. I had next to no guidance. I just, would listen to little bits of advice. I watched a lot of videos. I would ask people things and see what they would suggest, like on who to talk to, etc. People say they want to see you do well, but in reality, they never want to see you doing better than them. So when someone doesn't give you good guidance, that really can be the answer as to why. Like, why won't they help you or give advice if they want to see you doing well? It is shitty, but it's facts. Now, I don't know your exact situation, but I'll share a little story of mine. Simply put, I grew up poor as fuck. I grew up poor AF, poverty kind of poor, okay? It's all good. I think if I grew up rich, I wouldn't appreciate things or be street smart about a lot of things, So growing up, I had zero pocket money. My mum would pay me like £2 a week for babysitting the kids when I was like 11. It wasn't much, but to me, I was earning my pocket. And £2 a week when I was a kid got you like a big bottle of lemonade, a huge bag of popcorn. And that was a day out with my best friend, roaming the streets, having a laugh for like 8 hours a day. We would just go sit on like hills and, just people watch. Or we would just stargaze at night, like this sort of stuff to me when I was that age, and going out with, a friend of yours was just so chill. Anyway, I found it entertaining and it was enough for me at the time. When I was in secondary, I would work out the cost of my bus and I would start walking an hour to school with my bus friend. Sometimes I did it alone, but in the summer months, my friends would do the same thing. So we would, keep hold of our bus money and then walk to and from school, which took us at least an hour. We just wanted to save our pennies so we could grab a 25p can of lemonade and one of those 35p chocolate bars from the corner shop on the way home. And it was just a motive. Like, we loved doing that. When I was like 13, I knew this bus fare weren't really cutting it. So I got myself a job and I was delivering newspapers. Yes, I was. I delivered newspapers, and I actually would still recommend that to someone that needs money at the age of 13, 30 quid is a lot for a 13-year-old, unless you're rich as fuck, and I don't want to hear about them, alright? Some of us have to learn how to struggle. I opened a bank account, I would deliver like 800 papers over the whole estate, and got like £30 a month for it. It took like 3 hours to do once a week. That's like £2 an hour walking around in the dark and rain at night delivering newspapers. It was pretty shit. I don't know why I just tried to glamorise it. It was so shit. But I got 30 quid a month so I could go to like McDonald's 5 times. That's bloody great. As I'm getting older, this job was just awful. I wanted to hang out with my friends and get drunk. Especially at 14, I was hanging around with all the older kids, so they are all out all the time. I started dumping my newspapers. I would not recommend this. Please do not do this. I'm just being completely transparent and telling you the truth. But anyway, I started dumping my newspapers. Like anyone would read them anyway. Well, it turns out they did. Yeah, they did read them. And they reported me. Bastards. So when I got to like 15 years old and I received my national insurance number, I started applying for work. Nobody my age, except like 2 kids in my year, had a job. It was hard, but I applied everywhere and eventually I bagged myself a job. Not long after I turned 16. Yes, I lied on my CV. Arrest me. Something I put on my CV was that I used to volunteer at a museum. I've never done that, but it sounds good, don't it? Oh yeah. Anyway. At this point, I was working in retail while studying, doing exams, and being a chaotic party teen. I wasn't hugely chaotic. I mean like chaotic as in I just wasn't one of those teenagers that stayed at home on my phone. You know, I know a lot of people love to do that. But I just love being outside and socialising. That's who I am. I got myself all new clothes that actually fit me. And for those of you listening who can relate to what I mean about actually being able to buy your own clothes that fit you, not having hand-me-downs through like 4 generations. Like, it was fine, but you get to an age where you're like, I just want to treat myself. I just want to be able to buy something for me. Like, it's not like such a grey area in your life that you avoid it. Like, it's so nice when you can actually finally spend money on yourself that you made and you earn. Oh, it's just such a nice feeling. I wanted to learn how to drive, so I started saving up. Not a lot, but I knew that I wanted to drive when I turned 17. I got myself a lot of stuff that I never had, like a new phone, the new school stuff that I needed. I loved shoes and trainers as well, so I did get a few pairs of those. Growing up, I had a very toxic environment and family. I mean, my mum and my guardian just totally hated each other. They still do. They were super violent, ruined, you know, there isn't a nice way to say this. They literally ruined, you know, the happiness they could have had with us as children, because where their lives were so toxic with each other, obviously we grew up around that. You know, we were just, as kids, I just think it's really wrong that kids should be used as weapons. And we constantly were back and forth between each other. I was convinced one thing, a couple of years later I was convinced another thing, you know. It goes back and forth when, realistically, they should have both just stuck to the court papers. And to be fair, I'm pretty sure my mum stuck to them more. There was a court case over it. That's how me and my oldest sister, I'm the eldest, how me and my other sister, who's closer to my age, become adopted. It was actually through court and custody kind of drama. You know, they just used the kids as weapons, like 24/7, even when they didn't mean to. They were absolutely bloody evil to each other and to us. As you can imagine, for me, I mean, I don't hate them, you know. Like, I definitely don't hate my mum, and I don't absolutely... I just hated them both when I was that age. Not like hated them as people, just hated the way they were. There were phases and occasions I trusted and liked one parent more than the other. But I was pretty wise, so I knew they both were just as bad as each other. I just wanted to up and out, but I knew if I told someone about the way they were and the way they treated each other and us, we would all, all us kids, would just be separated and put into care. And I don't want my brothers and sisters in foster care. Honestly, the visions I had of myself going into care, I thought that was lit. I was like, oh my god. I would literally fantasize about it when I would, have a fallout with one of the parents. I would just think, oh my god. Like, my mum, when I was a kid, used to say to me, I'll send you to boarding school. And I actually wanted to go. But turns out, cost money. So I couldn't go. So I was like, oh, alright. Stuck here then. Anyway, they were both just as bad as each other. That was just the norm. I'd tell my siblings when I was young not to say anything, but I'm pretty sure they knew not to. It's pretty fucked up, to be honest. But, if it would... I can't really explain what I mean by that. Like, if you know, you know. If you get it, you get it. Like, if you've got to give your sibling the look to keep their mouth shut, if they understand the situation they're in, or they don't understand the situation they're in, but it's pretty toxic, they're not going to say shit because they trust you because you're the oldest child. Which makes me sound like a fucking evil person, but at the time, even now, I still have the best interests at heart for all people. But when you're in that situation, you just don't want to be separated from your siblings. And, I have and had a lot of love for them. So I didn't want that ever to happen. When I was 16, a week after my first exam, I got kicked out of my house. 2 years prior to that, my mum did the same thing. She kicked me out of the house. But that's not the story I'm telling. When I was 16, after my first exam in my GCSEs, I got kicked out of my house. And it was very toxic. It was abusive and violent. I wouldn't go back. I knew it wasn't right when I was a kid. And I knew if I said the other kids didn't have that happen to them, nobody would take action. So by that I mean, what happened to me that made me get kicked out of the house was a physical altercation that was totally inappropriate and violent, and it was something to try and intimidate me. By that point, I'd grown up with it my whole life. I'd had enough and I wasn't going to be in that situation anymore. So when I got told to leave and never come back, I quite rightly did so. But when I finally got a counsellor involved and stuff, when I got to the school, I made the right choices, which didn't feel like the right choices at the time, but I decided that it had to change and I was willing to be put into care for it. So I lied and said that my other siblings were safe and that what had happened had only happened to me. And I didn't quite tell the full story of what happened. I only told him the parts that I knew would not get them arrested. But I was pretty wise about it, which, now that I think about it, it probably makes me sound like a liar, actually. It probably makes it sound like why would they believe that I got in a physical altercation and I didn't feel safe about going home, but they wasn't doing it to any of my other siblings? That just doesn't make sense. But I don't know. This is nearly 10 years later. Well, not 10, more like 7. It was very toxic, abusive, and a violent reason why I wouldn't go back. I knew it wasn't right when I was a kid, and I knew if I said the other kids didn't have that happen to them, nobody would take action. They would just make me go back. And as I was 16, that's all they really offered. I could legally make my own decisions, as long as I wasn't putting myself or anyone at harm. I did my research. My friends were super supportive. I lived with one of them during the school days, and they wouldn't let me go home, to where I'd been in this altercation. I lived with one of my friends while I was doing my exams. So during the school days, I lived with her. And then her and her family were like, yeah, you're not going home. But, I cried to her about what happened. I exploded. So, of course, she weren't going to let me go home. On the weekend, I would actually stay at my other friends in the city. She didn't actually, where I'm from. So I live in Milton Keynes. So when we say the city, we actually mean the city centre. So the centre of Milton Keynes, where the shopping centre is. Turns out, We are the only town in the world, or in the UK, or that I've ever had a conversation about that says that. And it's really weird to me that other people don't say that. And it's really weird to everyone else that lives here. Like, when someone else says, what does that mean? We're like, yeah, the city, like, where you go shopping. And they're like, what the hell? Like, that's called town. But we live in a town. Has got a cathedral, so it's not a city. So we call that part of the city. Anyway, so my friend lived in Milton Keynes, closer to the city, which was really close to my work. So I would stay with her on the weekends, and I would work on the weekends. If it wasn't for either of those two, I would have actually been in some serious trouble. I must express how truly grateful I am, and was, like, back then, for their support and their help. One of the girls I'm actually still super close with now. If either of them ever listen, thank you so much. I saved my money and I got myself lunch and dinner if I wasn't given it. And nobody accepted rent off of me. It was so heartwarming, honestly. Heartwarming. Long story short, by the end of my exams, I had to move back in with my mum. It literally was against my will. I begged the council to help me, the housing association. These are all things, you know, people suggested to me, and I was listening to them, and they understood that I couldn't go back home. Because I lived with my friends for like 3 months, they just told me to keep doing that. Like, this is the council, the housing association. Obviously, I couldn't do that. Like, their parents didn't sign up for that. Although, one of them was thinking of adopting me, until my mum got in her ear about it. Like, both my mum and my guardian were just as bad as each other. Just as violent, just as vicious, just as narcissistic. So, why would I make a choice to put myself in an unhappy environment? Like, I've exploded at this point, you know? I have given in everything that I've always said I'll keep quiet. I've always promised myself that I knew it weren't normal, I just can't wait to move out. But I just gave in. I thought, why am I going to put myself back in that situation? I wasn't actually a rebellious teen. Like, I did as I was told. I was honest. If I was going to go out for a drink, I never lied about it, you know? I did what normal teens would do. I went out, I saw my friends. I was very honest. Like, if I was going to a party, I would say I'm going to a party. I think the only time I ever lied was, like, maybe when I went to see my ex-boyfriend once. I just said, oh, I'm going to go and see my friend. And, you know, it was like all my friends knew where I was, you know? It was like I was a very safe person. I understood there was bad people out there, and that was a reason for being honest about where I was. I did smoke like a bit of weed, but I quit during my exam period, and during this time of my life that I'm actually talking about, I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't even drinking. When I lived back with my mum, I didn't have a bedroom. I lived in the living room. Long story short, I'm trying to keep this brief just because I can really go into detail about each thing to get you to understand. I did eventually move back in with my mum. It wasn't my choice. Just to add, I did not have a choice. So when I moved back in with her, I didn't have a bedroom. I lived in the living room sofa for the next year or so. My mum charged me rent and wanted it in cash so it didn't affect her child benefit. I'm not saying this like I shouldn't have been paying rent. This has key info in the middle. Or in the second anyway. My mum charged me rent and wanted it in cash so it didn't affect her child benefit. I paid her in cash weekly. We argued a lot and still physically fought. Mainly because my youngest sister was quite literally... She used to literally beat my mum up. She was 8-9 years old when I moved back in. So the fact that she's laying hands on my mum, I wasn't going to stand for it. My mum would have battered us for a starter if we even raised a hand to her or our voice. So when my sister would, punch my mum, kick her, bite her, I'd fucking whack her one, obviously. The sheer shock of my mum not reacting to her by being such a devil child, like my sister and I would never dare. So when my uncle passed away, at the funeral, my cousin was worried about the struggle of the bills. At the time, I was 17, I had 2 jobs, I was studying accounting. it was an apprenticeship, and then I still had my weekend job in Monsoon Accessorise at the city centre in Milton Keynes. So I moved in the same day. You know, she told me she was going to struggle. She didn't lose her dad's house. So I moved in. I moved a lot in the last couple of years, so moving my stuff was pretty easy at this point. My cousin was having a hard time, and she was struggling to maintain a job. So she left a job and was like dating guys who'd send her money. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure. That's literally just what she told me. Like, she come into my work one day and she said, I left my job. I was like, oh, why? You know, I'm concerned because we got bills to pay. And she's like, oh, don't worry. This guy is going to send me money anyway. I'm like, oh, okay, right. Well, I actually ended up losing my apprenticeship because I failed my first exam. Not by loads, but I was really upset about it. I didn't have much of a choice but to go full-time in my retail job, you know, because I had a lot of things, a responsibility to pay for now. I wanted to be an accountant. It is the only thing that I've ever actually thought that's what career I want. So when I was in school and they tried to help us choose like career paths, that's all I didn't say, oh my god, I can't wait to be an accountant, but it was just like the only thing I was working towards because I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to be. So it really did upset me when I ended up, you know, losing this apprenticeship. All my wages I would put in my cousin's account to pay the bills. I didn't want her to use her dad's inheritance, and I assumed my half of the bills, which was something like £800, was enough for the bills, like my half, and, you know, whenever we'd want to buy fags and stuff, because that's the only other thing, like, I could think of was food, fags, transport, and, you know, the bills. So me giving her £800 a month, I thought that was more than enough. Within about 2 months, she actually ended up kicking me out. There is a story to that, so if you want to hear about it, let me know. But till then, we'll move on from that. I actually learnt a few years later she never paid the bills and put her debt in the name of her brother and sister. Ouch. Yeah. So it wasn't just me that thought that was a weird situation. But anyway, back to my mum's again. Back to my mum's I went. I'm keeping a lot of these stories pretty brief because I want to get into how to live by myself. But as you must know by now, I like to give a thorough background to like set the scene. Living with my mum this last time around was so toxic. I had a toxic boyfriend at the time as well, so I was pretty surrounded by negativity. And I just still couldn't wait to move out. I was doing my driving lessons and tests, and I couldn't wait for the independence of my life to be in my power. I was pretty independent anyway, but I still wanted to be smart about it. I was ready to drive and get a new house, and I just had to save up. I spent literally grands on driving lessons. I had multiple driving instructors, and I must have spent about £4,000 on learning how to drive. I did fail the first time, and I still think it's because the guy doubted me. Not the driving instructor, the teacher. Literally 2 days before my test, he's like, I don't think you're ready. And I was like, why would you say that? I'm definitely ready. And he planted that seed in my head, and I don't know if you've ever tried to change a driving test, but you can't for within a 3-day period, you can't change it. Like, it can only be changed before 3 days before, if that makes sense. So yeah, that is basically the bad luck that I had. I did spend a lot less time at home. My sister was pretty awful to me as well. Not the youngest, the older one. Everyone literally hated me at home because I would just discipline my youngest sister so she didn't grow up to be a spoilt little brat. And then my mum would take her out shopping every Saturday. So, you know, we'd just go in circles about that. People didn't like the way I was. Like, my family is a lot of them used to lie about things, and they would, I honestly wish I could explain what they were like, but I think a lot of it comes from, the roots. So the conflict is insane, right? So everyone just hated me. I just didn't care that they all hated me. I'm obviously at first I fucking couldn't stand it, but it just got to a point where I was just like, I learned, there's going to be people in life that love you, people in your life that you hate, and you have to put up with a lot of people in your life. Like, if you go to a job and you work with someone you don't like, you can't just decide to tell them to fuck off. Like, you work together, you just have to deal with it. I ended up going back to smoking weed and kept to myself. Like, I tried to be pretty private. I started going on holidays the year I turned 18. I was going out to raves and having a good time. And I actually worked 3 jobs, so I definitely earned it. I earned going out and actually kind of having the last glimpse of my childhood. Even though I was a fully grown adult at this point, I didn't really have a childhood. I was literally a total grafter. Like, working 3 jobs is a lot for an 18-year-old. And I just knew that's how I had to be to better my life and change my situation. This was when I began to get less and less support. Kind of back to the idea that I said earlier, where people want to see you doing well but never better than them. I mean, for someone like me who was basically a tramp until I had 3 jobs, a lot of people started showing their true colours, especially my family. Well, I got myself a whole new job, 40-hour contract, great paying commission, and that was so much better than, my 8-hour contract part-time job that I basically worked full-time, and then my restaurant job in the evening where I worked on a bar, and then I had a weekend job as well. Bear in mind, I worked the other 2 jobs on the weekend as well, but there was a job where I got cash in hand in a pub. I think it was like 6 till 12. And it was Friday one week, Saturday the next week. So, and I'd always get really good tips in there as well. So it was like doing 2 days work for that job. Slowly I quit my other jobs when I started this new jobs, and I was earning a quarter more in this one job than I did in the other 3 jobs combined. I then passed my driving test. Being 18 was a huge year for me. I had achieved so much in my life. I started seeing, the success from the grafting I put in. Like, I was more prepared than ever to start saving for a car and a house to move out, because I needed to get out of that situation. My mum kept charging me more and more for rent over the years. She knew I was earning more money. But then it got to a point where I refused. I, still bought my own food and paid for, when she'd need a help. Like, I'm happy to help, but she kept charging me more rent and never cooked me dinner, never did stuff for me. Like, I was lucky if my mum washed my clothes. And that's where I got this crazy addiction to just buying new clothes, because I was just like, if you're not going to wash it, I'll just buy new stuff. Like, as like a strike thing to myself. Anyway, also, I'd still help out looking after the kids when my mum needed it. So I just felt very taken advantage of at that age. Life is about give and take. So, on my 19th birthday, when I realised I became very, very irresponsible, I spent all my wages in one weekend. So after paying money back that I borrowed for the whole month of October, I started saving from scratch in November. So I was saving £500 a month. Sometimes more. So it's January now. I've arranged to view a car that I can afford. The insurance is looking good. I'm on my way home from work to pay my mum the week's rent. And she proceeds to discuss with me about needing to pay more rent because she told the council a lie about my residency, and that she had a huge backlog of debt because I was over 16, so the council tax was higher, and, she wasn't getting child benefit for me. This woman tried to put an aspiring accountant in £8,000 debt. I'm not kidding. She tried to put me in £8,000 debt because she lied. Because she didn't tell them I paid her rent. I was only 19 years old. She tried to put me in £8,000 debt. Like, I was trying to be an accountant. You can't be in debt. as an accountant. Just listen to how stupid that sounds. I won't even get into that rent because I just refused to pay her it, right? I refused to pay her it. I paid her cash rent every month. I say every month. I was paying her weekly. She wasn't declaring this income. That's not my fault. She lied to me. The council tax is not the responsibility of me. It is the responsibility of the tenant. Why can't I speak properly? The council tax is the responsibility of the tenant or homeowner, neither of which was me. So she kicked me out. She said, okay, this is your last month for living here. Move out. I've been looking to move out for like a year and a half. I looked at prices. I looked for friends to rent with. I worked out the costs of what I needed to do way before this woman kicked me out of my sofa because I didn't even have a room. So I can't say she can't kick me out the room because it was just a sofa. During this month, she finished converting the loft, so she stuck me in my sister's room during this month. My belongings are still packed from the last 1,000 times I've moved out. I had to cancel the viewing of the car I was buying that weekend and ask my friend to come house shopping with me. By this I mean like furniture and stuff. This is the same friend who I actually live with for the first time that my mum kicked me out. Like for the first time, the story from earlier. It is funny, isn't it? When someone makes you look like the problem child, that you're rebellious, that you're doing something wrong, but you don't even need to make people in your life try and understand. I would just tell them the situation. Mum kicked me out. I've got to do this. Like, I wasn't fucking about. I wasn't ever looking for sympathy. I don't want sympathy. I need to sort my problem out, They just see the bigger picture. All my friends cared about was, helping me put a roof over my head and make sure I was okay and being supportive and just asking me, what I'm doing. But this time I was actually old enough to rent a property. It wasn't looking so promising. So I spoke to my work about it and I got some reassuring advice that they'd be my reference for my application and told me how to private rent. Firstly, my biggest piece of advice if you're moving out, just buy all the shit you need before you move out. I'll tell you how to private rent in a second. I've got a step-by-step guide for you, since I really wish someone had told me this before. You don't want to move into an empty house because you'll spend loads on takeaways. I don't just mean food, I mean utilities. So make sure you've got a fridge, toaster, kettle, washing machine. If you private rent through an estate agent, like I do, and I always have, a fridge and a washing machine are known as white goods. They are standard. Most of the time they supply these two items. They do not supply you with a freezer. I've never had a freezer. I've lived in 3 different properties now, and over the last 4 years, I've never had a freezer. Very inconvenient. I mean, at least I'm healthier, I guess. It's kind of healthy not having a freezer. It's really inconvenient though, and it does cost more money because you can't stock up. Anyway, the good thing about an estate agent, providing you with these white goods is that if you have an issue with them, they will repair or replace them because they own the item and they want you to be happy in their property. They don't want you to have a bad experience with them. So in my experience, they've been really good with stuff like that. Like, I've rented in 3 different properties so far, and the property I'm in now, I had a few issues with the shower and one with the washing machine. So, I've lived here for nearly 3 years this year. Oh my god. Wow. When the shower, one day, just the hot water weren't working. So I contacted them and I just said, can you please get someone to come look at my hot water? And they let me know, look, you need a new shower. We can't replace it today, but is it okay if we replace it? Bearing in mind, they weren't leaving me without, they did say, if you need us to replace it today, it'll have to be done later. But to be honest, I wasn't in a rush. I have a bath, so I didn't need the shower replacing. I just preferred a shower. And because they were so quick to it, I was just like, look, don't worry about it. Just replace it when you can. After like a week, I was like, oh, is there any way you can get the shower replaced? And they literally got it done that day, or like the day after, something like that. And I was just like, wow. And then, unlucky for them, the actual shower started like fucking melting one day, so that was kind of scary. Sorry, Alex just walked in, so I'm going to go into another room and record, and it's probably going to sound different now, hopefully less echoey. I tried everything earlier, that's why the beginning of the pod sounds overly edited, but what I must say is that I've noticed I proper ramble on as I just listened to the last part, and that's not even what I decide to talk about. I'm trying to tell you how to live on your own, not how to solve your shower problems. But anyway, so we'll pick up off from... Let's make sure you buy all the shit you need, and I'm going to tell you everything you need. It's going to sound like a lot, but trust me. Anyway, this is what I did. My friend took me to IKEA. Now, I thought that place was expensive. It's far from it. I've got all my kitchen stuff, so cutlery, plates, bowls, cheese graters, chopping boards, cooking utensils. What else did I get? Oh yeah, like glasses, mugs, potato peelers, pots, pans, frying pans, oven dishes, baking trays, colanders, those things you drain pasta through. And like basic cleaning stuff like cloth, sponges, scrubbers. And I even got a huge clothing area. I got some homely touches from IKEA as well, like mirrors, a bin for each room. Also, bins are like the most expensive. Nobody tells you that. I think like I spent £20 on some ugly plastic bin. I treat myself to a few candles because I don't know about you, but candles from IKEA are so nice. Like, you have to have a smell of a few of them, but they have this vanilla one. It doesn't say it's vanilla. I don't know what it says, but it smells amazing. That was basically pretty much the basic needs in the kitchen. My little sister actually knew months ago that I was planning on moving out by the end of that year. So like 12 months earlier than I planned. My mum had kicked me out. Luckily, my baby sister got me a kettle, a toaster for Christmas, and they matched. They were these blue ones. I've still got them like 4 years later, so don't judge me. Maybe that's gross, but they're alright. They were like so good when I first got them, but obviously 4 years later you should probably replace that stuff. But it still works, so I still use it. My friend who took me shopping also had a partner at the time who worked at Argos. So I got myself a Hoover from down there. Hoovers look super expensive. I just said it had to be good both on surfaces and good at picking up hair. So the Vax Hoover, it cost me like, I think it was like 60-70 quid. It's lasted me 4 years. I've only just actually replaced it, and the new Hoover I got is a Henry, and to be honest, I actually preferred the £60 Hoover because it was so good at picking up hair and it just gripped the floor really well. Anyway, not relevant. What a bargain that was. Then she took me to my friend who took me to IKEA. She then took me to B&M, or it was Home Bargains, like one of those kind of stores. I'd never been to one of them before, so let me just tell you, what a steal. I did not know you could get like so many things so cheap and it still be like the same stuff that's in the supermarkets, like high quality products. It's just stuff that's not popular, I assume, or they just get a deal on them. I don't know. I got cleaning products from there, cloths, toiletries, bathroom tools, like, toilet brush, toothbrush holders, soap dispensers, and so much more. I mean, at this point, I had a bit more than I needed, but I even grabbed things like tinfoil and cling film for IKEA. Proper kitted out like crazy, and my mum wasn't interested in what I was doing at the time. All she cared about was this debt, so she didn't see I filled my room with stuff to move out. She must have thought I was collecting boxes to move out for my bedroom needs. I use Groupon for everything. I got new pillows, duvets, and, you know, the sheets, way more than I needed, like, as in the sheets for the bed, duvet covers, and pillowcases, as well as new bedding. I even got one of those mattress toppers, which makes your mattress even more comfy than it already was. I actually used Groupon for everything. Like, I think that's where I got my slow cooker. I didn't get that straight away, but I did get that. And I got a lot of other glasses that I needed, like multi-packs of them. And I think I did get actually one of my sets of cutlery from there. I was like panic buying, if that makes sense. Everything I've listed come no more to like £300, maybe £350 at push. It was crazy. I really don't know how I did it. I had absolutely no idea how to rent. My mum has only ever lived in council houses, same with when I lived with my guardian. My mum never had to pay a lot of council tax. She didn't have to pay house insurance. So I was learning a lot of these things in just a couple of weeks. And a friend of mine literally just started renting with her boyfriend a month before. So her advice I valued so much. She gave me advice how to view the houses through estate agents, how to email them, inquire. They would call you and you would discuss what qualifies you for that home. I wasn't getting much luck. I wasn't earning enough. So I had a little meltdown at work. My boss, he would tell them my month earnings were all salary based and my commission was just on top of that. Was actually a bit of a lie at the time, just a white lie. I mean, if you are like can ask someone you work with just to say, look, of course I'm going to pay my rent, you know, I'm good with money, but can you just please say that my total earnings includes my commission so that I can qualify for a house? Depending on who you work with, you know, they might be willing to help you out. So that's what I was really lucky with at the time. Just that little white lie got me into the housing market and I've never ever had an issue since. It's not a lie now, but it was back then. So that was enough to qualify me for the housing market in the area and the flats I was looking at. Some say I could have gone into a shared house, but this was the time of my life where I just lost like the 3 closest people to me in my life. You know, I cut off my mum, I cut off my boyfriend, and I lost my best friend too. And I really just knew I had to rely on just me. Like, I had really, really bad trust issues. I didn't feel like I should confide in someone or trust someone else. Like, I thought with shared housing, if one person didn't pay their rent, you know, the rest of them were affected. It's not like that. Shared housing is basically just a flat where you share communal areas. And this seemed like the best option for me at the time, so that's why I went for something much more independent, because I've always been quite independent anyway, so I just felt like that was best for me. I lined up a week or 2 of viewings, and the first apartment I viewed, it was actually gorgeous. Like, I absolutely loved it. Like, it was just so beautiful, white walls, white carpets, and it was looked after. It had like those old-fashioned beams on the ceiling, and the kitchen was so tiny, but you know, I liked it like that. Like, it felt so homely. Like, the layout of the apartment was so different to everything I've viewed, like, well, not viewed, but anyone's house I'd ever been to before. Like, you know, I only had 2 neighbours. It was very enclosed, and it was just absolutely beautiful. It even had this gorgeous, huge mirror that was like a makeup table, and it had a built-in wardrobe, built-in shelves, and it come with, you know, a spare wardrobe, spare drawers, and the bedroom was massive. So for me, for someone that's not really ever had a bedroom, to then having this huge bedroom and this huge living room, dining area that I just kept as a living room because I didn't see the need to buy like a table and stuff when I live on my own. It was just so nice. Like, I was absolutely in love with it. I put the fee down and I cancelled the rest of the viewing straight away. The fee that you have to pay, I don't know if you still have to pay this fee, but it takes it off the market and you do your credit check. So, you know, they check if you're eligible to be able to pay it, basically, to show that you're reliable with money. And it doesn't take a very long time. I think it takes like maybe up to a week
for them to do this process, but what it does is it like reserves that house for you. So nobody else can take it off the market. I don't know if this is the case, maybe it is with mortgages. I think you're allowed to still do viewings, but nobody else is allowed to take that property off you, even if they, offer more money, because you've already put the fee down. That's just where I'm from anyway, but I might be a little bit wrong about that. And it might have changed now anyway, because I haven't had to, move house for about 2 years now. I didn't tell anyone where it was, and I was so excited. It was literally right next to my work. I had to pay a deposit and a month's rent up front, and the other fees you have to pay at the time. So at the time, you'd have to pay like an inventory fee. If you had pets, you'd pay a pet deposit, and you would also pay like a paperwork fee. So they would like charge you for their time, basically, to get this process going. Nowadays, you aren't actually allowed to be charged for extra fees. So most of the things I paid back then, it was way harder in cost to get a place. So, luckily I'd saved up a lot of money to buy a car. So it was actually enough for me at the time to place, all these deposits and fees down. I think it cost me just over $2,000 just to move out. The rent was something like nearly £800 for this one bed flat that was small, but it's the biggest place I've ever had. I'm on my third place now. And that's because it was also, one, bloody beautiful. It was well decorated. It was a really nice location. It was bang smack in the middle of the high street. It was right next to my work as well, which was so handy. It took me like 1 minute to walk to work. That was just, it was so good. And I had like a little garden area that I'd share with the other two houses. Like, there wasn't a fence in between it, but we had our own sort of little area. And I also had parking, and it was gated. So because I lived on top of a restaurant, which I didn't actually know, like I didn't know that for like a month or so. Like I just assumed that I was separate, but it was only when I really sort of stood back and noticed, because on my side of walking into the house, you couldn't tell, it just looked like a house, but you actually walked up like 3 steps, and then when you went in the house, you walked up another like 5 steps. So that's like the upstairs, and that side of the flat was like the ground was raised more, like where the garden area was. So it was only when you walked around the other way, instead of through the gate onto the high street or through the path to the car park, you actually realised that you're on top of a restaurant. But you couldn't really hear much, like it was insulated really well. And obviously most restaurants shut quite early. Like, I assume this one did as well, because I literally didn't even know. And I just think that's probably why it also could have cost a little bit more as well, because you're right in the middle of all these busy town facilities. Is that the right word? I don't know. Anyway, and this area had like a big car park attached to it, because it was for the high street and the shopping area and the restaurants. So it had this huge metal gate that was electric. So sometimes I would have like people knock on my door and be like, sorry, I parked my car here. Like, they'd feel really bad. And I'm just like, yeah, no problem. And I'd have to open the gate, the electric key. That was a flex. I'm sorry. But I literally felt like, oh yeah, I've made it. Gated parking. Who am I? Super bougie. Anyway, I tried to make sure I had everything I needed for this flat. Sorry, back to what I was saying. I was so excited. I was scared, but I was excited. I even went onto like eBay and ordered a £50 bed frame so that moving out was super easy. When moving day came, my friends and I all moved my stuff into my place within like 3 hours. To be honest, I had quite a lot of friends that were supportive at the time. Like, I know I said it was a hard time in my life where I lost like 3 people, but they were like the main people in my life. Like, you've got the closest people to you in your life. At that point in time, I was closest to 3 people, removed or lost all 3 of them. To have like all my friends support me this much, I'd never felt so loved in my life. Like, the way they all just turned up, you know, and if anyone of you know me or have got the gist of what I'm like yet, I am a super panicky person. Like, I'm not, like, visibly panicky, but I'm a bit of a control freak. So I like everything to be organised, everything to be done the way I want it to be done. Like, I'm quite a time management sort of person. Like, this sounds really bad and really selfish, but, like, I can be not selfish. I can be late, but other people can't, and that makes me selfish. You know what I mean? Like, I won't get mad, but it just, like, I don't know, it's just like an OCD thing in my brain where I just get obsessed with things need to be the way I need them. And I think that's just from having to be overly independent in my life. Like, I've learned that I've had to rely on myself, so that's why I like things to be done the way I need them to be done, because I know that a main person looking out for me is myself. And I know that can sound quite selfish, but I don't mean for it to. I literally loved every minute of moving out, and, you know, I just remember where I'd literally lived in this room in my mum's house for, like, not even a month, and all I had in there was just boxes and brand new stuff just ready to go. You know, where I'd moved house a lot, everything was already packed, so the only thing I ever had to use was, like, you know, packed stuff was, like, work stuff. Like, I never really used much of my own stuff because, you know, I was at that time in my life where I was constantly moving in and out, so, you know, it was really easy to move it all out, especially since a lot of the stuff was new and in boxes. Like, when you go to IKEA, they give you these, like, boxes you can make for things like glasses and plates and stuff, so they just got a handle on them. They're well easy to put in, like, cars and stuff. So I remember, you know, my friends opened up their car doors on my mum's drive. My mum was at work, and I think my siblings were in, but one of them didn't even talk to me. And the youngest one, she was just in her bratty years before she became a teen. God, why is my phone on loud? Sorry about that. Anyway, and my friends literally were standing, like, a couple of metres apart throughout the house, all the way to the car, and I would just pass one of them something, and they would just pass this parcel of the item, and it would just be put in the cars. Like, honestly, I can't even explain how nice it was. Like, they really, really helped me out, and I just appreciate it more than anything, because that was just a really hard time in my life where, you know, I was completely changing my whole life, and I just don't really take well to change, so it was really wholesome, you know? They all helped me out so much. Once we, you know, got everything done and put in the house, you know, I was just happy. Like, it was just all there. We could just leave it there at that point. And, you know, during the day, one of my friends with a van actually helped me as well. We went and picked up these sofas literally on the day. I just found them on Facebook, picked them up. You know, gave them £100 for these 2 sofas that I wanted, those silver crushed velvet sofas. I just thought they looked nice. By the way, they are so uncomfy. But I still have them now because sofas are expensive and they're not something I need. You know, when I'm rich, I'll get myself a rich man's sofa, you know? Or shall I say a rich woman's sofa. And it'll be super comfy. And it'll be nice to know that when I get them, it'll be a time in my life where it's just, you know, like spare money just to get a sofa. I don't want to invest in something that I don't spend all day on, you know? And there's just so many other things in my life I could spend that money on. But, you know, we all just sat on these sofas and sat on the floor with all these boxes around us. We went and got fish and chips from Smarts, and it was just so nice. Like, we all just sat there and I just felt so appreciative. Like, I was scared to sleep on my own in a house I'd never slept in before. Like, it was bloody scary. And I remember just taking a picture of the house just full of these black bags of my clothes and these boxes everywhere, and I've never felt so content in my life at that point. And I was just like, oh my god, like, I actually did it, and it was so nice. Like, when you cut off all these negative things in your life that are bringing you down and causing all these issues in your life, and you just completely change your whole life, honestly, I couldn't recommend it enough to so many people. It's weird because, like, it felt like it was one of the worst times in my life, and I just completely turned it around. you know, with the advice from others, of course, I ask for a lot of advice, and I don't like asking for help. I really struggle to accept help, and I'm coming to terms with that a lot now, that it's okay to ask and it's okay to accept help. But at that point in time, I couldn't do it. I couldn't accept help. I couldn't figure it out. I was just so scared. So, like, having all these people give me advice and helping me out, it was hard for me in different ways, but I was learning, you know, like, to be the best version of myself, I have to work on these things. I just like to remind myself that even though I did take all this advice, I still did it all by myself. And it was just, like, I did that for me. Oh, I just love myself so much sometimes. Like, I actually forget to be grateful for myself a lot. And it was just so nice to be able to be like, oh my God, I actually did this. Like, I got here. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I did it anyway. And that's another thing you need to try in life. Just try and take some risks. Like, I always think risky things are a big no-go. It's like a red flag in my brain. But honestly, it will be one of the best things you do for yourself one day, and you'll learn from mistakes. And sometimes you have to make a mistake twice to learn the right way to do it. Like, if things keep going wrong because you thought, well, the first time I can't do that because that went wrong, do it again, and just do it in a way where you're wiser, and maybe slightly different way, and it might be the answer to all your problems. And honestly, you just have to, you know, just do something. Like, change your life. Like, don't expect it to change itself, because it literally will not. It will only get worse if you leave it and you don't do anything about it. If you're in a position where you're not able to change something in your life at that point in time, outsource, look for advice, ask people what they did. Because sometimes if you're living with your family and, you know, you get on well with your family, but you're still not happy, you don't feel independent enough, you feel like they nag you even though you know they love you, and you know that they just want what's best for you, and that's why they moan that your room's not tidy, or they moan that you've left the house a mess, or whatever. Just save for a mortgage, you know? Try something like start a new activity, or start disciplining yourself, try a new routine. It's all the little things that can make a huge impact on your life. Thank you so much for listening. Please come back every week for a new episode. Maybe sometimes, if I get any good at this editing stuff, I will try and post 2 a week, but for the time being, it will be 1 episode a week. I hope you can keep up with my overwired brain and getting deep into stories about how I feel, my experiences, and I hope you can enjoy all the advice I can give you. If you ever have anything you want me to discuss or want more advice on, or even if you just want to be a guest on the show, please drop me a DM on Instagram. It's at, like the sign, podcast.j. Now, thank you so much, and have the best day ever. Stay tuned. Oh, and make sure you follow, share, subscribe. I don't know how it all works yet, but it won't be long until I do know. So I hope you enjoyed the first episode. The audios might sound slightly different because basically I recorded the first half and then I waited for Alex to actually help me out with it. So I was like, why does it sound like it's echoing? You know, I was having a mare with the mic, so I just thought, fuck it, I'll record anyway. And if it sounds bad, it's because it's my first recording and I'm not an expert yet. So the talking part is what I'll be an expert at, and then the editing will follow. So please, bear with me, and I hope you enjoyed it. It won't be long until I get some guests on the show. I just felt like, you know, the first few episodes would be best if I actually introduce myself and what I actually feel like I can strongly talk about, especially when it comes to independence, and also like my opinions, my experiences, and obviously my advice. I love to give advice because it's the thing I valued the most throughout my life, is advice. Like, where people have just given me a bit of advice here and there, and where I've got different opinions of people, it's just really helped. I don't know why I'm starting another episode at the end of one, so I'll save this for another one. But have a great day, a great week, and just know that I 100% value you being here, and just please drop me a DM at any time. If you heard my lisp, no you didn't. If I repeat myself, it's probably because I'm nervous. And if I repeated myself, I am sorry, but it's hard to know what I've just said. Bye!